Getting into luxury, especially in Paris and especially as an international person, it's incredibly hard and it tries your patience and it tries your hard work. I swear every single applicant who applies to the thousands of internships that exist in Paris, it really sometimes puts you at your lowest. Everyone who's applying to these internships or everyone who's trying to break into luxury loves luxury. That's a baseline. So you can't explain your love for luxury away because everyone kind of has that. So I think trying to differentiate yourself in what makes luxury different to you.
Hi, Grace. Welcome to the show.
Hi, Amelia. I'm so happy to be here.
We're so happy to have you. So let's start with your journey. So from Princeton to Paris, how did it all begin? What drew you to luxury specifically and why Paris?
It is interesting to think back because I think I had quite of an unusual path, especially to France. So when I graduated from Princeton with my economics degree, my first initial step was actually to be working in tech sales in Boston. And so that was kind of the plan, always leading up into graduation. And then I think around spring break, so like a month or two before actual graduation, I had some epiphany that wasn't what I was meant to do. I wasn't meant to live in Boston and work in tech. And so I kind of had this epiphany with my friend. And a year or two before, I was supposed to be living in Paris for the summer, in the summer of 2020. So obviously, we know how that worked out, and it didn't end up happening. And so I think I always had a thought in the back of my mind, especially when I was nearing closer to graduation, that I missed out on a sort of experience. And so I actually quit the job that I already had completely aligned, and I became a jeune fille au pair, which is basically a full-time nanny abroad. And so I found a family in the suburbs of Lyon, France. And so I took a gap year during that time. And so when I was first moving to live in Lyon, it was actually my first time ever being in France. So I was just kind of committing to the fact that I knew I wanted to be in France, even though I hadn't actually stepped foot in the country. I always had like a sort of infatuation for the language and the culture. I think obviously a lot of people are like, it's so beautiful, the language and, the c'est la vie est belle, whatever. It's so nice. And so, yeah, I just kind of, I shoot my shot. And I was living with the family there for the full year. And as the year kind of got closer to being done and finished, I knew that I wanted to continue my academic journey. And at the time, I always had like a sort of appreciation for luxury. And I'm not someone who was always shopping personally luxury items. But I think like many other people, like the luxury market is such a elusive, kind of exclusive thing. And for me, I think what really drew me to it was that there are two different sides of the coin. It's like you have the history and the heritage and the craftsmanship, but at the same time, there's that element of innovation to like move beyond, because without that kind of intersection, I think luxury wouldn't be, as successful as it is today. Oh, and why Paris? Yeah, I guess I had always had this sort of infatuation for it. And even when I was living in Lyon, I loved it there. But obviously I had the opportunity to visit Paris many times because it's only a short 2-hour train away. And so I just always loved it there. There's so much opportunity. It's beautiful. And especially wanting to be in luxury, I think that was a natural choice.
Okay, so let's fast forward. You're in your role now in Paris. Let's talk about a day in the life if we can. Mm-hmm. What does a typical day look like for you? Or is there even such a thing?
I mean, it's never going to be exactly the same. I think whatever I'm working on specifically, the actual content of what I'm producing will always be different, even though the projects that I work on are around a couple months in general, which is why I've only really touched on 2 so far. But the work I'm always doing is completely different, whether I'm working on a workshop deck or producing like training materials, things to that nature. But the baseline of my day-to-day, I get in the office at 9:30, which I think my American friends are very jealous about. Get a coffee, I sit at my desk. I'm pretty much on PowerPoint for the majority of my day, which is not so glamorous, but I've come to appreciate it, I guess. It's very soothing at this point. And then, I always have my very long lunch, which I appreciate. And then back to the desk. And, I'm lucky to have a lot of meetings, like scattered around, whether it's with clients or my team to brainstorm or to go over the project that we're working on. So for the most part, I would say it's the same unless we have clients coming in or, my team is like leaving for a training or whatnot.
Was there anything that surprised you about agency life? It's quite a specific setting working in an agency, I think even compared to client side. Did anything surprise you?
Being in an agency, and my agency is only around 50 to 60 people, so it's definitely a smaller atmosphere. And especially with my team, I'm only working with around 6 other people. And so it's a really tight-knit group. And I think because of that, when they bring in new people, new interns, et cetera, there's a lot of responsibility that's given right off the front, which I think I was struck by at the beginning because initially, and especially in America, I feel like interns sometimes are, they're like the grunt worker. They're doing all of the things that, the managers don't want to do, and everything that they do is very scrutinized over, where I was really surprised to be given so much work and trust and responsibility at the very beginning. And I think through that, at the beginning, they see how much you can do, and then you can kind of adjust the working process after that. But yeah, I really appreciate it. And then I think that also speaks to the team that I work with. And I'm not sure if it's an agency thing in general, but I really appreciate my managers being able to, trust me like that.
Yeah. And I think it can be a cultural thing as well. I think when you're working across different countries, the organizational culture tends to, I see it a lot. I've got children in French schools and I see how much the school gives them independence as well. I think it might be a cultural thing. Okay, so you might have answered this next question. What part of the work has felt most rewarding so far?
Yeah, well, it definitely ties to what I just touched on. And so the fact that I have so much responsibility and the relationship that I've been able to build with my managers, because of that, I think they really value my input and my opinions, and whether it be small things or larger structural things. And so I can see that what I say or what I work on is really like taken into account in the final like output of the project, which I think is really cool because normally, once again, a manager wouldn't really trust everything an intern's saying, but she genuinely values what I'm saying and what I'm producing, et cetera. And yeah, to see what I actually produced in the final product, it's very, very gratifying, I think.
Oh, absolutely. I can see that being super, super rewarding. Okay, so for anyone dreaming of following in your footsteps, let's get to the burning question. Is working in Paris actually like the show Emily in Paris? You knew I was going to ask it. So what's been the most surprising part of adjusting to agency life here, especially like Emily in Paris, coming in as an American?
Yeah, I mean, there are definitely some elements that I think can be similar. And I mean, Emily has such like a glamorous life. She strolls into the office, I swear, like never.
I don't know how she walks around in those shoes in the Parisian streets. Impossible.
Exactly. But I think like French agencies, especially mine, it's very small, it's very people oriented. So it really is important to build those sorts of relationships. And especially as an American, it can be kind of tough because I think French people naturally are very like tight knit and they kind of stay with the people that they've really grown close to. So sometimes it can be hard to kind of penetrate that barrier at the beginning. But no, but I mean, there still are elements that I like have really come to appreciate. Like during lunch, I go to Palais Royal, or like sometimes I have enough time to go and like walk along the Seine if I wanted to. I can go and do my errands or like go to some appointments during the day. I can go shop in the middle of the day if I wanted to.
Were there any cultural codes or unspoken rules that took time to figure out?
There are definitely some French elements that I'm still trying to get used to. At my first internship in Paris, this is such a small thing, but apparently when you enter an elevator, you're supposed to say bonjour to everyone, which to me, and so like it's such like a non-thing, and it's like you don't say anything, and people think you're automatically rude right off the bat. So that was
that American.
Yeah, exactly. that American in the office. Oh my goodness. And another thing that I'm still, I don't know if I'll ever, this was a problem for me even the moment that I first entered France, is la bise, which is like basically like bisous. So you do like the kisses on the side of the cheeks. And there's such like a nuance to it. Normally you only do it if you're familiar with someone and you're in like a casual context. But I see like my managers doing it to people sometimes or with clients sometimes. And so I'm like, I don't know when I should be doing la bise. And for instance, On this past Tuesday, I had a big workshop with one of our clients, and I was standing up from my chair, I think, to go get her some water or something. And so she was kind of really close to me. And so I think she kind of approached me.
Oh, the going in, but not going in.
No, exactly. It can feel so intimidating, especially like as an American, especially me. I have a very like large personal bubble. And so when someone approaches me with their face, I feel like I get so scared.
Do you know, I've been here about almost 5 years now, and actually I just do it all the time. I go in every time, and it gets rid of that awkwardness.
Yeah, that's true.
You just kind of accept, I've got to do the biz.
Exactly.
And I'm going to do it. I'm going in.
Exactly. But I didn't see my managers doing it, though. So I was like, is this like a non-thing? Is it just like an after the meeting kind of thing? Because after the meeting, everyone's doing la bise. It's like, so great. We'll see you later. But at the beginning, I'm like, do I go in for the handshake? No. Or do I just kind of, hi, nice to meet you?
And I find it's even more confusing in the international offices.
Definitely.
When there's mixed cultures,
Yeah.
and that's when it's just really blurry and really awkward.
Exactly.
And what's one thing about French work culture that you've come to really appreciate? And I'm sure there's many.
Yeah. Well, I mean, definitely the long lunches. Like the stereotype is so true. I think I take around every day an hour and a half lunch.
And it's totally acceptable.
Oh, completely acceptable. But I think that's also, I'm not sure if it's my agency thing or an agency thing or just a general French thing, but there's no like kind of hour schedule. Like I know the time I'm supposed to show up to the office at the beginning of the day, but everyone just kind of has their own schedule. Like even so my friends back home, they take, 30 minutes at their desk.
Oh, yeah.
So it feels like such a luxury to be able to essentially take that time, and it's like a nice break during the day to kind of clear my head.
Absolutely. And I think it was actually illegal to eat at your desk in France.
Really?
It was illegal. Yeah. Oh. I think they might have changed it recently with all the COVID stuff and they didn't want people to socialize. I'm not sure if it's been officially changed, but it's actually illegal. And I think back of my time in Australia or even in, working in London, in other countries, Anglophone countries, it's really strange to go and sit down in a restaurant for lunch for an hour. So it's amazing here. And I think it's got a lot to do with how important relationships are. For the people at home listening who do want to follow in your footsteps, do you have one piece of advice or more? What's one thing that's helped you show up confidently, do you think, in a new culture or environment that could help others?
Definitely. I think for me personally, it's always being prepared. I mean, that's just like a baseline. I think I can't confidently show up anywhere if I feel like I have to wing something on the spot. And I know a lot of people can, but I'm not one of those people. And I think another thing that I have to continually remind myself, especially like being the odd one out culturally amongst the group, is that they haven't invited you there because they think you're like the rest of them. So I think it's good to recognize that what you're bringing from your own culture is something unique, that you have a different perspective. And so just kind of, taking advantage of that. Like what makes me different is what makes me, more valuable.
Absolutely. And I think, especially in an international environment, I think bringing a new perspective is absolutely always valued. Mm-hmm. I want to talk a little bit about your education and how it's helping you with what you're doing now, because you've got a mix. You've studied economics, design, and luxury management. What from that mix do you think has helped you the most so far?
They all have played their own kind of role. I think economics, gave me a good foundation, but am I using anything like from my day-to-day from what I learned in my undergrad? No, I'm not drawing graphs or anything. Like this is very different. And I think luxury management gave me another great foundation in terms of theory and more like practical tools. Like, yes, I am doing consumer personas and doing strategic things. But I think what I really appreciated the most was my time at Parsons, when I learned to expand in my design thinking, and I still don't even know if I can fully describe what it even means.
Could you? Because I think it'd be really interesting for our audience.
To me, design thinking it's like creating a thinking process that has the end consumer in mind. So you're always thinking about the feasibility, the usability, the innovation to it. And so within my exchange semester, we used a lot of tools and brainstorming. And it was really kind of meant to push your ideas and your thinking to the limit. And I think in my day-to-day, it's been the most helpful because we always are, brainstorming, kind of troubleshooting things. And so I think it's the most realistic tool. And even when we're working with clients, we also suggest these kind of frameworks to them for them to integrate in their daily lives. Yeah.
I love hearing these kinds of frameworks because for me, and tell me if I'm wrong, what I'm hearing is it's consumer centricity.
Definitely.
You're working back from there and it's critical thinking.
Yeah, absolutely.
You're absolutely trying to solve a problem for the consumer.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know, that's my specialty. I love insights and consumer centricity. All right, I love that. So was there a moment early on when you realized just how different the real work, this is always a good question, was from what school prepared you for?
I mean, definitely. It's hard because, you know, in school you have a very like clear outline of what you're like expected to do for projects or assignments. Like there's a very clear problem or objective that you're supposed to do. And especially in agency life, it's the objective, the problem, even when the client comes to you with what they want you to accomplish, that always changes. It always changes. Everything is always kind of off the hat. It's, you know, it's just changing from the original goal, and you just kind of have to flow with it. You have to move with it. You have to be very agile. But I think that's also what keeps things very exciting, I suppose.
Absolutely. So maybe that will feed into my next question. Is there one skill or tool you wish someone had shown you before you stepped into your first role?
Yeah, I mean, definitely what I had mentioned before is trying to think on your feet, to be able to shift. It's like the natural balance between, okay, you have to be organized and prepared and structured, but at the same time, you have to be able to change at the drop of a hat. And another thing I'm still learning, I think I've gotten a lot better at it, is how to synthesize and be very concise in your, you know, in your content, your project, etc. I think in school you're taught to, you know, be super thorough and explain like every single step of your thought process. And within consulting specifically, it's so incredibly important to be able to, you know, synthesize all of your ideas and kind of present it in a very, you know, tight, very clean, pretty package to the client.
Yeah, that's very luxury as well, isn't it? It's all about the delivery. It's all
very
about the
much so.
delivery. Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so for those that might be approaching that gap between school and, you know, their first job, what's one practical thing someone could start practicing now?
I think taking the assignments and the projects very seriously, what they're doing. 'Cause I think for me, some of those projects that I would do in school started to become a little repetitive. Like, why am I always giving presentations over brand strategy or consumer lifestyle? But it actually is the work that I'm doing from day to day. So I think to really take time and learn how to hone your skills, especially when you're presenting, like that's something that I'm still working on, being able to, you know, present in front of my seniors or in front of clients. Like there's a reason why they have you presenting every week in your master's. And another thing, I think it's, you know, like the things that everyone puts on their CV, like I mastered the Microsoft suite. Like I'm a master at PowerPoint and Excel. Everyone says they can do it, but well, I mean, let's be honest, like are you actually a master at PowerPoint? Like,
yeah.
I think do yourself the favor and actually like the things that you put on your CV to really learn how to do. Like I could have saved myself 2 weeks at the beginning of my internship, because obviously I said I can use PowerPoint, but was I a master at PowerPoint? No, I was a Canva girl. I think everyone in my master's uses Canva. And so just save yourself the time and actually, you know, master those simple things, and then you'll set yourself up for success, I think, in the future.
Because everything goes so fast, right? So if you've got your foundation set up, it's easier to adapt to the changing briefs. You know, you're not having to rebuild PowerPoints. And
yeah, absolutely.
I love that. Okay, so let's move on to your first year. How have you built confidence, especially in a room full of more senior voices?
I think it ties back to something I mentioned earlier, but being prepared for me is key. I think I will always kind of, not for now, I'm going to continue to be stressed, but I think sometimes that stress is kind of what drives me to perform sometimes. And also I try to remind myself that it's not that serious. I mean, it is serious sometimes, but that it's not the end of the world. They don't know what you're about to say. And so just take solace in the fact that if you mess something up or if you forgot to say something, they're never going to know. So be prepared, and it's never that serious.
Okay, so what's something you've observed from your senior team that you're trying to learn or emulate to move to that sort of next level?
My team, my managers, they meet with clients all the time. And once again, they just feel so natural in front of the clients. The ideas come to them so quickly, and maybe it comes with time, but at the same time, I have to know that I think to be very, confident in yourself, very proud in yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that it is definitely a combination of it comes with time.
Yeah.
But I think as well, it's very, for me, would it be fair to say it's communication?
Yeah.
The presentation, the ability to speak off the cuff, to sit in front of a client and, as you said, speak off the top of their head. Mm-hmm. I guess a lot of it sort of boils down to communication. All right, so what's one small habit that's helped you stay grounded on high pressure days?
A small habit. I like to, once I'm finally like in the zone where I'm like, okay, I've done the most I can do in terms of preparation, I just like to, listen to music. And I always try to remind myself if I have something, stressful or a big presentation or a big project to send in by the end of the day, I try to just remind myself in X amount of hours, in 12 hours, it's just going to be done. Think of that moment that it's sent in and that like serene feeling that, yeah.
Okay, so let's think about luxury from the inside. What's been your most, I can't believe I get to do this moment so far?
I think so far, my managers get to do a lot more cool things than I do. So hopefully I'll be able to achieve some of the things. But I think so far, so I've been working with Balenciaga, which has been super exciting. And especially, it was actually at the very beginning of my internship that I got to go to the HQ. And for me, it was just so surreal, especially because it was right at the beginning. So I got to get all dressed up, obviously in all black, because that's Balenciaga. And I got to go with my two managers, and we spent the whole day there doing a workshop for another project. And it was really cool to be able to meet the team. And surprisingly, it was a lot more casual than I thought it would be. Like, I think everyone has this idea that like luxury can be so stuffy, but it was super nice. Everyone there was so kind. And it's also very international, which I was not anticipating as well. So it was really, something I look very fondly on.
Well, then you've started talking about it already, but I was going to ask you on the flip side, what's something people assume working in luxury that doesn't quite match the reality?
It's definitely, everyone assumes that luxury is so polished. It's very, controlled and stuff. But I think on the inside, you can see how messy and chaotic that can be. It's such like an interesting kind of juxtaposition between the two. It's like there are elements that are extremely controlled. Like, in some of my friends who are working in advertising, they tell me how they'll be doing a shoot for a commercial, and like there's like one little hair out and it costs like $15,000 to remove just the hair in the commercial. So there are certain things, like the control is very there, but at the same time, sometimes the work and the communication between teams is so messy and chaotic. And so I think that also helps relieve some of the stress, especially working within the industry, that it seems so rigid sometimes, but I feel like in reality, it's not really the case.
And there's something that they call the swan effect. And it's pretty much what you're describing. On the outside, it's beautiful, graceful, elegant, calm. Mm-hmm. But underneath the water, the duck is, frantic, trying to make it look effortless. So, it's very real, I think, what you're describing. Okay, so I've got a question for our audience. Again, sort of people looking to follow in your footsteps. Is there anything about working in luxury that you haven't already talked about that's both honest and inspiring that you might want to mention?
I think the opportunity that even when it's so messy, and sometimes it can be a little chaotic, and maybe sometimes there's like a gap between what's expected and what's not, because trust me, I have a lot of friends that are working in other brands and companies that for them it can be really hard. But that, I think if you take the time, I think it's all about patience, like learning that there are different codes in luxury that you have to get used to. And if you really kind of like revel in that, if you really take advantage of, in the motion and meeting the detail that's really required in luxury, that I think that really is the space for you to grow. And I feel like right now I've been really able to achieve that, like from the beginning 6 months ago when I started at my current agency, that I have really grown as a person and as someone who's working in the luxury industry. And so it's not necessarily about being perfect, because I think that's the image of what people have of luxury, but I think it's really about patience and hard work and things of that nature.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think I've worked on both sides, luxury and non-luxury. And I think I haven't heard it articulated like that before, but I love that. You know, we talk a lot about the attention to detail. Yeah, that's very luxury, but it takes patience to get it to that detail.
Definitely.
And it takes longer. You know, it's not FMCG, you know, which is volume, fast, and they really are quite different. I agree. Okay. What's your one piece of advice you'd give to somebody trying to break into luxury marketing or consulting? And I know you've got stories about how hard it was to break through.
Oh my goodness. Getting into luxury, especially in Paris and especially as an international person, it's incredibly hard, and it tries your patience and it tries your hard work. And it's such a shame because I swear every single applicant who applies to the thousands of internships that exist in Paris, it really sometimes puts you at your lowest. But I think once you break in, it's a lot easier, first of all. Everyone who's applying to these internships or everyone who's trying to break into luxury loves luxury. That's a baseline. So you can't explain your love for luxury away because everyone kind of has that. So I think trying to differentiate yourself in what makes luxury different to you, and also differentiating, especially in consulting, like your sense of thinking. Like I think because I was able to prove, you know, in luxury consulting especially, I think it's incredibly important to prove how nuanced your thinking is. If you can think outside the box, if you can provide unique solutions, that's what's incredibly valuable for these consultancies. Because once again, everyone loves luxury, but what can you bring that's going to make the new wave of luxury? So that's going to make you stand out, I think, within the bunch.
I love that. And you know I'm going to touch on insights because it's my jam. You know, you have an economics degree. I know that you said you're not using it, but given that you're actually working with a consultancy, big brands, I mean, at the end of the day, everybody's in business to grow. There has to be something you're tapping into from that. Do you think that that is something that would benefit a lot of our listeners who are looking to get into not necessarily even just luxury, but looking to get into a space, an agency or a company that is iconic and big and has expectations? Would it benefit them to think a little bit more about sort of the numbers and the business side as well as the creative?
Oh, yeah, definitely. I think especially as a young person, if you can bring that both sides of the coin, if you're able to have that analytical side to you, but also have the creative edge as well, like that's not something that everyone has. And I think right now, and this is just my point of view, I think a lot of people, especially like in master's programs now, I think they're really interested in the creative side, but a lot of people that I know didn't have that kind of analytical base, and I feel very lucky to have had it. And naturally that comes to me a lot more easily. So I've always enjoyed being able to, you know, pull from numbers, have more evidence in what you're doing. And if you're able to tap into that as well, I think it would be incredibly valuable.
Yeah, I love that. I completely agree with you. Now, to flip it around, what's one thing our listeners should be avoiding?
I think because kind of like I mentioned before that everyone's trying, it's luxury, especially if you're trying to go into advertising, etc., that you want to lean into the creative side of it. So I've seen a lot of CVs of other people, and sometimes it's a little too creative. I think, honestly, and maybe that's just because I'm more like this, but the more straightforward, the better. Like there are certain things, especially in Paris, that differ very much. Like when you're first applying, first of all, you include a picture on your CV, which in the US would never fly.
They like really short CVs here. I learned that as well. It's no more than 2 pages, whereas maybe overseas we go 3-4 pages.
Really? No, I've always been taught 1 page. And I think it's good to have a little bit of like an edge, but I think simpler, the better.
And did you have a CV in French and English?
Yes. I had multiple different versions. I had my American CV, I had my French CV in French, and I also had a French CV in English, because a lot of the times, even if it's a French company, sometimes they prefer your CV in English, but they still want it in the French style. So yes. I had a lot of different variations, and yeah, it took a lot of time.
Persistence.
Exactly. Persistence is key. All you can do is just continue to better yourself, get more certifications, take classes, and get knowledgeable. I think, especially within my current job, we have a regular practice of keeping up on luxury news. And even that, just small things to keep you, in tuned with what's happening. It's just a small little thing that I think will, in the end run, really help you if it comes to an interview process or meeting with clients, et cetera, et cetera. So.
I love that, Grace. Thank you so much for your time and for sharing your story and for being so open and honest with us. I know that our listeners will take a lot of the insights away from what you've shared with us today. So thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Amelia.